Welcome to this explainer on the Enhanced MYP beta trial. Today, we're diving deep into the changes coming to unit planning and, specifically, the approaches to learning, or ATL skills. If you've ever felt buried under a mountain of curriculum compliance, or like you're spending more time filling out forms than actually designing great lessons, well, you're going to want to hear this.
Here is our roadmap for today's explainer. We'll be looking at 1. The unit planning problem, 2. A paradigm shift in MYP, 3. Streamlining ATL skill categories, 4. Flexible teaching and documentation, 5. The rationale behind the changes, and finally, 6. Teachers as curriculum designers. So let's just jump right in. Starting things off with Section 1, the unit planning problem. We are shifting from mere compliance to actual practice. Let's be real for a second. Be honest with yourself. Does your MYP unit planner just sit there gathering dust after the first week of a unit? How often have you found that your planner acts way more like a cold, algorithmic checklist than an authentic reflection of what's actually happening in your classroom? You painstakingly write it up, you file it away on a drive somewhere, and then the real, messy, beautiful teaching happens completely separately. And look, you're absolutely not alone in feeling this way. The IB actually did some extensive research into this, and they hit the nail right on the head. They noted that rather than using unit planners as iterative living documents, teachers often complete unit plans once without referring to them ever again. Planners have unfortunately devolved into these compliance-driven exercises, and instead of helping us teach, this actually gets in the way of effective classroom implementation. It's a massive pain point for educators all over the world.
Which brings us to Section 2, a paradigm shift in MYP, prioritizing process over product.
The whole idea here is moving away from rigid, box-ticking compliance requirements and moving toward flexible, user-friendly guidance that truly empowers teacher agency. The new framework actively champions flexibility. It's aiming to transform educators from tired compliance followers back into empowered, creative curriculum designers. Because at the end of the day, you know your students best, and this shift finally respects that. Let's get into the specifics in Section 3, streamlining ATL skill categories. This is a space where less is absolutely more. First up, let's compare the current and enhanced approaches. The IB is officially dropping the requirement to use those 10 specific skill clusters. Instead, they're retaining just the 5 core categories: communication, social, self-management, research, and thinking. The rationale here is super practical. By streamlining this, the MYP significantly reduces cognitive load for teachers, and it creates much better continuum coherence with the primary years and diploma programs. It is just cleaner, simpler, and way easier to track. Also, remember that giant exhaustive list of 140-plus specific example skills? Yeah, that's gone. Under the enhanced approach, that gets replaced with a significantly shorter, much more manageable list of general skills. And the best part? It's adaptable. Schools can freely trim it, adjust it, or even create their own skills to perfectly fit their specific subject and student needs. You're no longer bound to a massive, universal checklist. This leads us perfectly into Section 4, flexible teaching and documentation. It's all about regaining your agency as a teacher. Say goodbye to agonizing over whether you're teaching a skill implicitly or explicitly. Under the current approach, teachers constantly had to label their teaching that way. But the enhanced approach removes those strict labels entirely. You now get to dynamically decide exactly how and when to teach a skill. You can model it and practice it to match the authentic, natural flow of learning, rather than forcing a pedagogical label onto it just to satisfy a rubric. And honestly, this next part is a massive time saver. That rigid documentation formula is totally gone. Remember writing out, in order to meet this objective, students must use this exact skill for every little thing? Not required anymore. The enhanced approach allows you to simply identify the skill you intend to teach and then just outline the learning experience or strategy. It's a highly practical way to document skills that actually fits your real-world context. Moving right along to Section 5, the rationale behind the changes. Why make all these updates right now? Well, extensive IB research revealed that a lot of us had this huge misconception that all 140-plus sample skills were completely mandatory. Because of that, schools naturally attempted to cram way too many ATLs into a single unit. Consequently, planners became those algorithmic checkboxes we talked about, and teachers just felt incredibly restricted by all the documentation rules. So, the ultimate goal of this beta trial is to alleviate those frustrations, knock down the compliance barriers, and restore your autonomy and innovation.
Finally, let's look at Section 6, Teachers as Curriculum Designers, and how all this actually impacts your unit planning.
The actual planning process is now dramatically simplified into just 3 logical steps. Step 1, identify the ATL skill you're going to teach. Step 2, outline the learning experience or strategy. And Step 3, reflect and adapt dynamically during the unit. By cutting out all the unnecessary bloat, it makes it so much easier for us to be responsive. You can integrate ATLs dynamically when the actual classroom need arises, rather than trying to perfectly predict every single interaction 6 months in advance.
Ultimately, this frees up your entire planner to be what it was always meant to be, an iterative, living document. And this is supported by a whole package of liberating updates. For example, the rigid statement of inquiry is replaced by a highly flexible inquiry questioner statement. You don't even have to force in a global context if it doesn't naturally fit. Concepts are streamlined into a single specified list per subject. Subject group overviews can now take whatever form is appropriate for your context. Plus, community engagement, which is replacing services action, is now embedded directly into the units. It really is a holistic shift towards genuine, practical flexibility.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a thought, maybe a bit of a challenge. How will you use this newfound flexibility to design learning that truly matters for your students? Now that the restrictive compliance barriers are finally out of the way, how will you seize this agency to craft truly unforgettable learning experiences? Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive.